Ventura County has thousands of farms, more than 2,000, maybe as many as 3,000 farms that look just like this. There are tens of thousands of farm workers that work at these farms every single day, and many, if not most of them, are undocumented immigrants. This is around the time that you would see a lot of workers out here. And today, it has been a virtual ghost town of workers.
That's our Jacob Soboroff reporting from farm fields in California's Ventura County last night, noting that many fields were empty amid fears of ICE raids targeting farm workers who tend them. New video showing several of those pursuits, agents chasing, even tackling one worker through the rows of crops as federal vehicles circled this field. In the sky above, NBC News spotting Customs and Border Protection helicopters flying over these farms. Many of these undocumented workers are working there. And now United Farm Workers, the labor union founded by Cesar Chavez in the 1960s to advocate for farm workers, is sounding the alarm. Joining us now from one of those fields in Ventura County is Roman Pinal. He is the National Vice President of United Farm Workers. Roman, it's great to have you with us to shine some light on this part of the story. Let's start with those videos we've now all seen online that we just showed our audience. What do you know about the ICE raids targeting field workers this week?
Well, what I know is that these raids need to stop. They need to stop. These kinds of tactics are no way to treat valuable members of our community. No one should have to work in fear. And ironically, I'm here with a full crew of workers who are harvesting radishes. These radishes are going to end up at our grocery store shelves this weekend for all the Father's Day barbecues that are going to be happening around this country. And that contribution, that just having a beautiful celebration this weekend is not possible without the men and women, farm workers, who are doing this amazing work for us here in Ventura County today.
All right, guys. So I want to talk about an interesting set of developments that is happening within the Trump administration as the president gets backlash for the mass deportations being expanded outside of just violent criminals, in which we know that Democrats and the mainstream liberal media, they would still be upset if the mass deportations just targeted the violent criminals, because look at how they acted over President Trump deporting Abrego Garcia, right? I mean, they lost their minds, right, over President Trump deporting an alleged human trafficking, wife-beating gang member, right? I mean, we all know that Democrats, regardless of who President Trump deports, they want all the illegals in the country, right? The violent ones and the non-violent ones. However, there are reports to suggest that the Trump administration, they're shifting their focus when it comes to the mass deportations due to alleged backlash that they are getting from big ag, right? Big agriculture, mainly these farmers, a lot of these food companies that rely on illegal immigrant labor, aka slave labor, in order to pad their profits. Yeah, they're speaking out about this. They're very upset with the president targeting their workers. Okay, you also have the hospitality and the leisure industry as well too. They are very, very, very upset, and that allegedly is why we are possibly seeing a policy change from the administration. And I want to talk about this policy change because if this is true, then in my opinion, I do not think that this is a good move from President Trump. And there are some people in my comment section who claim that, you never criticize President Trump. You never have anything bad to say about him. Well, this is your lucky day, right? Save the video, right? Because this is a video in which I am going to be very critical of the president, because if this is true, this is a part of a very disturbing pattern of behavior that we're seeing from the president, in which he is exposing his weakness to the left, to the mainstream liberal media, that will surely be exploited in the future when President Trump does something that they don't like. It is now becoming kind of clear how to get the president to shift course when it comes to certain policies if he's getting backlash from the right people. So I want to talk about it because, interestingly enough, the same people who are so opposed to the mass deportations of the illegals are basically mocking and taunting the president for this apparent policy shift. They are accusing him of surrendering, right? He surrendered on the mass deportations because he's essentially not focusing as much on farms, hotels, and eateries when it comes to the deportations. Again, allegedly, that is what is happening. Take a look.
Donald Trump put his surrender in writing at 9:43 a.m. today, saying, our great farmers and people in the hotel and leisure business have been stating that our very aggressive policy on immigration is taking very good longtime workers away from them, with those jobs being almost impossible to replace. We must protect our farmers, but get the criminals out of the USA. Changes are coming, exclamation point. So Donald Trump promised to deport every one of those people working on farms, every one of them. He promised to deport all of them. And then he decided not to deport them today. Donald Trump promised to deport 15 million people. That would include everyone who is working in those fields, harvesting the food, making beds in hotels, everyone. And now that Donald Trump has finally decided to listen to the owners of those industries, he's not going to deport 15 million people. He's not going to deport 1 million people. It's over. The mass deportation lie that he never could have done anyway is over. And Donald Trump formally, publicly gave up today.
By now we know you can't take Donald Trump at his word, so we were suspicious, to say the least, when he signaled yesterday that he would alter his hardline immigration policies to prevent some deportations at American farms and hotels after hearing complaints from business leaders. And according to new reporting in the Washington Post, it is very clear that Trump has no intention of changing, quote, no such policy changes are underway, according to 3 people with knowledge. Do we have the sound of where he said it, honey? Because I thought it was just so insane. Let's play it.
We can't take farmers and take all their people and send them back because they don't have maybe what they're supposed to have. We can't do that to our farmers, and leisure too, hotels. We're going to have to use a lot of common sense on that.
So no common sense. We can do that to our farmers and those in the leisure industry because we just got a quote from 3 people with knowledge saying no such policy changes are underway. So which is it, Mr. President? What you doing? Who's running your government, by the way?
Yeah, fascinating stuff. So the same people who boo-hoo, whine, and cry about the mass deportations are now taunting the president because, according to them, he is surrendering on the mass deportations for a certain segment of illegals who, again, they have vouched for the most, right? The slave labor, which is what Democrats care about the most, okay? The party of the Confederacy, okay? The party of slavery. Yeah, they've shown us that they haven't changed one bit, right? Again, I do find it fascinating, though, that they're taunting the president over him doing something that they begged him to do. I'm just saying that wouldn't be what I would do, right? If I cared about my slave labor so much, I wouldn't taunt the president for surrendering, okay? For giving me what I want. But anyways, again, there's a lot of mixed messages, right? Mixed signals about what's happening with this and what they're doing. It's hard for me to not believe that they're shifting on this because the president at least has said at a press conference that, hey, you know, they want to treat those workers a little bit differently. He's also said it on True Social. The New York Times is reporting that there are emails internally within the Department of Homeland Security confirming that there are policy changes when it comes to worksite operations and raids. But at the same time, you have other reports that are contradicting this and saying, well, there are no policy changes. So who knows? Maybe this could be 5D chess. But I'm going to make this video assuming that this is not 5D chess. And I'm going to explain why I think that this is a bad idea from the president and why I think that it is fair to be highly critical of President Trump if he is, in fact, surrendering or folding when it comes to the mass deportations of all the illegals, okay? Because ultimately today, what he's showing is that when big business gets upset, when big business lashes out about something, that is probably the easiest way to make the president fold. Like, for example, when it comes to the tariffs, okay? I gave the president the benefit of the doubt when it comes to taking the maximalist position on the tariffs. However, it is very clear that the president did change his tariff policy when it came to backlash from Wall Street and some of the businesses who are heavily reliant on business with China, right? They were carving out certain exemptions for special interests and certain businesses that, again, wouldn't be able to stomach the tariffs, okay? And at that time, right, that kind of showed that, hey, you know, if big business speaks out about this, if big business says, hey, we don't like this, right, that you're really hurting us, that, again, that can make the president change his stance when it comes to policy. So now you basically have somewhat of a similar pattern here. Again, if this is true, I'm just making this video assuming that it's true. I don't know. Maybe it is, maybe it's not. But again, if it is true, then again, you have a same pattern here where now you have big agriculture, right? Big hotel, okay? Big motel, right? Big slave labor. They're coming out here and criticizing the president and saying, you're hurting our business by deporting our labor, right? And we can't have that. And now, again, the president is softening his stance on mass deportations. Now, some people on the right have criticized the president and said that, well, this is a betrayal. I wouldn't go as far as to say that this is a betrayal because I don't think that this is something that is going to change their approach when it comes to trying to get criminals out of the country and making the mass deportations a priority within his administration. I mean, he's already sealed the border, right? He sealed the border. We know that they're targeting criminals. And ultimately today, I mean, getting the illegal immigrant slave labor out of the country, I mean, that's like a bonus at this point, right? But it was a bonus that he was going after. And I think one of the main reasons why he was doing that is because the sanctuary cities weren't cooperating, right? The reason why they were raiding these work sites is because, like Tom Homan stated, if you don't cooperate, right, if the sanctuary cities don't cooperate, then we're going to raid these work sites, and that's going to put more pressure on these liberal cities to cooperate. That was kind of the whole point, because at first they came out and said that, hey, we want to target the criminals, right? We want the mass deportations to start with the violent criminals first, and then we're going to go to the non-violent criminals, okay, and we're going to get them out, right? That is what they said at the beginning. But again, when the sanctuary cities weren't cooperating, then they said, all right, cool. Well, if we got to do the raids ourselves, then this is what we're going to do. And obviously you're not going to like it. And I think the whole point of that was to put pressure on the sanctuary cities and sanctuary states to change their policies. So if President Trump is folding on this, right, if he is softening his stance, now you're taking pressure off the Democrats. What you should be doing in response to the backlash from Big Ag is to go to the business leaders and say, don't look at me, don't blame me. We're doing this because they're not cooperating. I have a campaign promise to fulfill, right? We want to deport millions of illegals that Biden let into the country. But we can't do that when the sanctuary cities and the sanctuary states aren't cooperating. So if that's the case, then we're going to do what we got to do. So if you're upset and you want us to, target the criminals more, then the Democrats need to make it easier for us to target the criminals. And therefore, we will focus more on that than raiding the work sites. That should have been the response. The response shouldn't be, oh, well, okay, well, we won't raid the work sites. We won't raid the hotels. We won't raid the farms. We won't raid the businesses. That shouldn't be the response, because that basically now tells the illegals that, hey, if I want to stay in the country, I need to go get a job on the farm, right? I need to go get a job at a hotel. I need to go get a job at a restaurant. You're basically telling the illegals where to go to avoid being deported. So again, I just think that this is a very bad move from the president. Again, if this is true, if this is what he's doing, and he's just projecting that he has a weakness, a clear weakness. His weakness is big business. His weakness is when Wall Street, or when, again, big business, big industry comes out and says, hey, we don't like this, that you're hurting us, that he is willing to change his stances. And he's now projected this on multiple issues. So it's a problem, right? And this weakness will continue to get exploited when it comes to any subject, when it comes to any policy, any topic, because again, it's become clear this is how you get to him, right? This is how you make him fold, right? This is how you make him change his stances. And furthermore, on top of that, the response to deporting the illegals, right, and the shortage of labor should be, well, Americans should be doing those jobs. Americans should be doing those jobs. And I know some people say, well, Americans, they don't want to do those jobs, right? And it's like, what do you mean Americans don't want to do those jobs? Again, that's the problem with this country. That's the problem. We've gotten to the point in this country where people are saying, well, Americans don't want to do those jobs, so therefore we should use slave labor. And it's like, well, if you don't have a job and you need to live, well, you shouldn't have a choice as to whether or not you want to do the job. You should do the job, because if you don't do the job, you're going to starve. And see, that's the problem. That's how you know that our entitlements have gotten too big, is when you have people who legitimately believe that, well, I'm above doing that job. I'm above doing farm work. As if there's no dignity in farm work. There's nothing wrong with a farm worker, right? There's nothing wrong with a hospitality worker. There's nothing wrong with somebody working in a restaurant. If you don't have any other marketable skill, or again, you're unemployed, how is it beneath you to do a job like that? It's not beneath you if you don't have any other marketable skills, or again, you're unemployed and you need a job and you need income. It's not beneath you to do that job. And again, that's part of the issue. And then you have people say, well, there are Americans who are willing to do the job, but they don't want to do it for those wages. And it's like, well, okay, well, what's a fair wage? What's a fair wage to pick strawberries? How much skill is required to pick strawberries, right? You want to pay people $15 an hour, $20 an hour, $25 an hour to pick strawberries? You think that that's what we should be doing? So imagine if that's what we were doing. If we wanted to get Americans to work those jobs, right? Oh, we got to pay them $25 an hour to pick strawberries. And then people will be upset when the cost of strawberries skyrocket because of labor costs going up. So some people may respond to that and say, well, what's your solution? What do you think we should do, right? If we're going to deport the illegals, right? How are we going to get Americans to work those jobs? Well, it's easy. When you got 7 million unemployed men, right? Who, again, are comfortable being unemployed and not having a job, not working. Again, that suggests that maybe our entitlements might be, again, too much, right? But furthermore, on top of that, we have teenagers who need to enter the workforce, right? Who should be working these jobs. I mean, I cut grass as a teenager. I work for minimum wage as a teenager, okay? So, you know, I'm just saying, I wasn't above it as a teenager. I think it helped me out a lot, right? It helped me develop a lot of soft skills that helped me, you know, later on in my career. And on top of that, I remember growing up in Eastern North Carolina, helping my grandparents on the farm because they would farm and grow their own food, right? So I remember helping them pick the collard greens, okay? Pick the cabbage, right? Pick the crops. That's what they did. That's what they did. Till the farm, right? Till the land. That's what they did. And I was out there helping them. Growing up as a kid. I mean, I'm just saying. I mean, this is not me speaking from a perspective of not ever having done stuff like that. No, I've done stuff like that before because I had to growing up. That's how I grew up. But also on top of that, we have prisoners. We got prisoners. We already have our own form of quote unquote cheap labor or slave labor, if that's what you want to call it. I read in the article that they're paying these illegals like what, $20,000 a year. Okay. So yeah, to somebody that's not in prison, that, you know, is looking to pay rent or to buy a house or, you know, feed a family, whatever. Yeah, $20,000 a year is not nearly enough. I get that. I understand that. But to somebody that's in prison, I don't understand why you don't pay them $20,000 a year to do it. Save the money, put it in an investment account, invest it in the S&P 500. And if they're doing 10 years in prison, then over the course of 10 years, that's $200,000 saved up. Plus the interest from it being invested. After they get out of prison, they have 10 years of job experience, right? Doing something productive for society, and $200,000, again, plus more, to go out and start a new life. Why is it that we're not thinking about out-of-the-box solution to get the cheap labor that we need in order to have cheap food, right? I don't understand it. Why is it that illegal immigrants, foreign labor, that's the only solution, right? That's the only solution. There's nothing else. Well, Americans don't want to work for it, and we got to import all these people from another country. It's like you would think that the Democrats learned from the mistake of slavery, right? You would think they learned that, hey, you know, if you start importing foreign labor, then, you know, they tend to stay here. And when they stay here, down the road, that may create some problems for you, right? You would think they would have learned that lesson from slavery, right? When it comes to how, when you import foreign labor, you're kind of stuck with it, right? You're kind of stuck with those people. So I'm just saying that, you know, hey, in my opinion, there are other solutions that I don't think are being explored. And that if people are willing to think outside of the box, if we're willing to change our attitudes about these jobs and how we see these jobs and understand that it's not beneath anybody to work those type of jobs, And that, hey, these jobs are necessary for skill building. These jobs are necessary for character building, right? It's nothing wrong with normalizing Americans working these jobs. This is something that Americans were doing before mass immigration into the country. Americans used to do these jobs. The reason why, part of the reason why we don't have really big families like we used to back in the day is because we don't need as many people. We don't need as many children to work the fields, right? To work in the farms, right? That was one of the main needs for big families, right? Well, we got to have a lot of kids so we can have more labor. And nobody looked down on the kids. Nobody looked down on the family for working the farm or, doing certain types of jobs or certain type of labor. But now all of a sudden it's 2025 and you got a whole bunch of people say, well, I can't do that. Can't do it, right? You got to pay me a fair wage to do it. And it's like, well, what is a fair wage, again, for a job that doesn't require much skill, right? I mean, let's be honest. You got to start somewhere. And if you don't want to work that job, then, hey, you develop more skills and you get paid more. That's how it works. But again, if you're one of these people that's unemployed and you don't have many skills, then it's not beneath you to work a job like that. It's not beneath you to go out there and work in the field, to pick some strawberries or some cotton, or to, work in a hotel or a restaurant or whatever. It's not beneath anybody that, again, doesn't have the skill set to get a better job or, again, is unemployed to do those type of jobs. And again, when you talk about having people that are locked up in prison that owe a debt to society, yeah, they should be pushed into doing that type of labor. We need to be using those people more. And I know in some situations they already do that, but it needs to be done more. We have too many unemployed men. We have too many people, okay, that aren't working that can work and do these jobs for us to be importing foreign labor, okay? Again, these are not some super specialized high-tech jobs where it's like, okay, well, we only can find the talent in some other country. That's not what this is. This is something that basically any homeless person on the street can do, right? Any homeless person on the street can do some of these jobs. And they should be doing these jobs. They should be. So the labor is there. You just have to find ways to get people to actually work the jobs and to get people in those jobs. And we don't need illegals to do it. Hey, all else fail, we got AI, we got automation, we got tech, which, I mean, essentially we already rely a lot on automation when it comes to farming. At some point, all of it will basically be automated. But I'm just saying that, I mean, as of right now, until then, we don't need foreign labor to do these jobs. We have the labor. What we really need now is the leadership and out of the box innovative ideas in order to get the American labor, again, that we have, that is readily available, into those jobs. That's what we need. So let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.